The topic is the Sudan Revisited, and we're talking to Dr. LMadu3, who is an international lawyer. Now, Dr. LMadu3, I think you've talked about the agreement that has been, that was recently signed between the Sudanese government and the SPLA. But now, when you look at the situation that you've already described, you also find that there's quite a bit of disunity among both factions, which is to say that there's disunity among the Sudanese government and there's disunity among the PSLA. So how do you deal with the fact of this division? And explain this disunity to our audience this morning.
Well, you know, in the South, you have two predominant ethnic groups, the Nuers and the Dimkas. And for some time, they've been having, you know, problems that are not unique. Most countries in Africa go through a whole lot of ethnic upheavals, you know, and so the Sudan is not a unique situation. But under the conditions, you know, in which the country finds itself, it becomes even more important that there needs to be unity between, you know, the various ethnic groups in the South for there to be peace. For a while, the Dimkas and the Nuers have been at each other's throat. And the central government in Khartoum, you know, have been using that opportunity to split the two groups. Like I said before, you know, they have a proverb, you know, saying, Akut, you know, Al-Abid, Bil-Abid, kill the slave through the slave. So they use the Southerners to exploit their differences to kill each other while they sit down and, you know, divide the spoils. And that's been the problem for a long time in the South. So hopefully, John Garang, who's Dinka, and Riek Machar, who's his second in command, who happens to be Nuer, can be able to sit down and, you know, act responsibly and understand that their people have suffered for a long time, and this is no time to start fighting, you know, for the spoils of war through ethnic divisions. And I think having met both of them here, I think it's going to work out, because most of the Sudanese, regardless of their ethnic, most of the Southern Sudanese, regardless of their ethnic background, want, you know, peace. They want, the Dimkas want to live in peace with the Nuers want to live in peace with the Dimkas, the Acholis. All of them want to live in peace. So it's time for the leaders of these various groups to sit down and work out a system whereby they can, you know, be able to work hand in hand with each other. They don't have any alternative.
Now, last time you were with us, you talked about the Sudan, and you also indicated that the Sudan was surrounded by countries or forces that were able to take advantage of the division. Now, what has been done in reference to these other countries surrounding the Sudan to sort of bring them into this accord, or at least bring them into an agreement with the accord that has been signed?
Well, it's in the interest of some of those countries, you know, for peace, you know, to reign in Southern Sudan, even from the economic point of view. For example, if there's peace in Southern Sudan, countries like Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia can benefit from the Southern oil. You know, there will be cross-border trades, you know, that don't exist now because of the conflict. And moreover, the people in northern Uganda might be able to have peace too, because right now the Sudanese government is sponsoring a group called the Lost Resistance Army that goes from Sudan over to Uganda, slaughters people, and run back to take refuge in Southern Sudan. So with this agreement, the governments of Uganda and Sudan might be able to have an understanding whereby the Southern Sudanese government will deny sanctuary to these rebel groups, you know, that are operating from its territory against the people of Uganda. So that's one way, you know, that the peace dividend from the conflict can, you know, get to Uganda. Kenya has a whole lot of refugees from Sudan. Those refugees are likely to go back, you know, to the Sudan, relieving the Kenyan government of the burden. The Zairian government, you know, the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, the same, has, you know, a lot of refugees from the Sudan. They'll have to go back too, so that will relieve pressure from DRC itself. You know, so there will be a whole lot of peace dividends, you know, coming out from the conflict.
Well, it seems to me that the Sudan is one of the most important areas in Africa, and not only what happens in the Sudan really has a tremendous impact upon all of those countries, and the countries that you mentioned in Kenya, and some of the countries that, in a real sense, many Americans are familiar with. These countries are also impacted by this. Now, you mentioned the fact that the United States became involved, and what did the United States do in terms of bringing this agreement about?
Well, pressuring the Sudanese government that he has to, you know, reach an understanding with the Southern Sudanese. After the events of 9/11, the Sudanese government started reassessing its position, you know, vis-a-vis Islamic fundamentalism and other things. And moreover, the Northern Sudanese government was also tired of the war. I mean, the war was costing about $1 to $4 million a day to prosecute. So this is money that could be saved, you know, if the war ends. But at the same time, a whole lot of people are skeptical. Now, they say, well, the government in Khartoum had an agreement now with the SPLA, but they're still killing people in Darfur. Okay, you have to have an agreement, you know, with the rebel group in Darfur and also with the rebel group in the northern Nuba Mountains in order for there to be an overall peace in the Sudan. Because if the conflict in the Darfur continues, then the money that will go through, you know, towards rehabilitating the country will still be wasted fighting. So that conflict at the same time has to come to an end for there to be really the true peace dividend in the Sudan. And I think General Bashir, the current president, you know, I think he might be well-meaning. But from my understanding, so many individuals in his armed forces, you know, oppose, you know, the agreement he just signed. So you never know what will happen. And that is why I've emphasized the need for the South to just become independent, you know, of Khartoum. Because tomorrow a sergeant might take over the government and tear the agreement up.
But now, if the South becomes independent, the South will in reality be sitting on all this oil, will it not?
Absolutely, and that's part of the problem. Right now, in a place they call the Upper Nile region, the Southern Sudanese Defense Forces and also the government of Sudan are still creating a whole lot of problems where the oil is concentrated, and that's going to be a problem. Yesterday, January 20th, the British government and the Dutch government established diplomatic, you know, headquarters in Rumbek, the capital of South Sudan, so they can be able to protect their interests vis-a-vis oil explorations. And several other governments have indicated their intentions to establish diplomatic presence in Rumbek. And what does it mean? It means that they've started realizing that eventually, at the end of 6 years, the South will become a truly independent country. I think all, you know, everything that's happening now points to that direction.
So you think that they will actually gain their independence? So the Sudan will gain their independence within this 6-year window of opportunity?
Absolutely, because part of the accord says that the SPLA has to maintain its own, you know, independent army. And in the first accord in '72, it wasn't that way, you know, but now...
And so they've got an army of their own
Exactly,
now.
they have to have an army of their own, and in 6 years, they will have to build up the army. So at that time, they might say, look, why do we have to, you know, disband this and become part of Sudan again? Let's just stay the way things are.
Now, with this group, and over the last minute and a half, Dr. Madu, with this group expanding its army, the other group using some kind of intrigue or whatever to undermine the process, then what makes most of us so hopeful that this might be the answer over the last minute and 15 seconds that we have?
Because I think everybody is tired of the war. The Sudanese themselves, Arabs and Christians, they're tired of the war. A whole lot of economic interests are involved now that they don't want it destroyed. You see, the United States and the United Nations are firmly in support of the agreement. And like I said before, 10,000 United Nations troops will be in the Sudan to make sure, you know, the agreement is stuck to.
In other words, they'll be there to keep these two groups from continuing to fight, and etc. And the situation will be monitored in a real sense.
Exactly, to make sure the agreements are, you know, implemented, and at the same time to make sure human rights are respected, which has never been the case before. So I am optimistic, and most Sudanese, Southern Sudanese are very optimistic, and I think the international community feels the same way, because nobody wants that war to continue. Over 2 million lives have been lost in the past 21 years just in this war. 6 million internally displaced Sudanese, the largest displaced group, you know, in the world. So, you know, it's a war that this time has come for
Very good. And of course, Dr. Madu, let me thank you for coming by and bringing us that excellent information about the Sudan. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
Find out.